All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the NFA interview series where we spotlight powerful stories and insights from individuals living with fibromyalgia and chronic illnesses. Okay. I'm your host, Jacqueline Monet, brand consultant for the National Fibromyalgia Association, or NFA for short. I know it's a mouthful, and someone personally walking in this journey of healing and self advocacy, just like you. So today's part conversation is part of our Awareness Day spotlight. And I am so honored to introduce someone whose story truly exemplifies resilience, purpose, and transformation. Okay. I can't wait for you to meet him. But after battling long COVID to managing chronic symptoms and reclaiming his life, Michael Meller is a voice we're proud to amplify. So let's dive into this incredible conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Mike.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. Okay. So, man, so just so everyone knows here, he sent me over two of his incredible articles. I'm sure two of many. I know there's a lot more where that came from, and we'll tell you where to find him and follow him at the end. But, Mike, we have to ask you, so you've written so honestly about your health journey, right, to the world. What inspired you to start sharing it publicly? Because no, a lot of times we can keep this close to the vest and not really want to share. So, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I had an autoimmune issue, been dealing with chronic pain for quite a while. But the long COVID really sent my body just into a on fire reset, like a bomb went off in it, essentially
Yeah.
neurologically. Facial blinking stuff. I
Whew.
wasn't sure really what was going to happen. I really didn't know. Couldn't work. Times I couldn't see.
Wow.
Hearing issues. I can't watch TV, and it's a long way of saying, all I could do is kind of put my head down and start taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
And um,
Mm-hmm.
obviously it was all for me in the beginning, and
Yeah.
just trying to, is it something I eat? When I do this, does this work? 2 days later, I got the Oura ring, tracking food, tracking, and just started to kind of gather these things, started to just make a little bit of progress. And as I've kind of gone through the past few months, getting to a point that I can start to return to work, although with a lot of restrictions.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here kind of staring at this stuff saying, can this help somebody else?
Right.
Somebody, it's so isolating and nobody can understand where you're coming from. And it was just awfully lonely and isolating times. And so I just hope it can be helpful to somebody. And that's really what it's about. And, finding these communities where, you and I kind of talking offline, so it's just feeling seen and feeling like, hey,
Yes.
I'm not crazy.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
that doctors may not understand it, but this is happening to me, and I'm taking videos and just I think it was helpful for me to find places like this, and I hope it can just be helpful.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that and being seen. Yes, we talked about that, what that means. And we definitely will share some of my resources so you guys can read. Because I was telling him earlier, there were just some key pivotal moments where I was like, wow, I was really trying to figure out how to put this into words and he did it. And I feel so seen. So, yes, you are spot on. And you also gave some good advice as to, so a lot of us struggling with this, especially when it's new and we don't understand what's going on and we've never experienced it before. And it's crucial to find a way to kind of keep a record of what's happening so that especially if it's repeatable, not offenses, but repeatable moments and symptoms that we are seeing happen quite sometimes to then figure out, okay, what's triggering it? Why did this happen? And where did it come from? So that's really good points there. I really appreciate you bringing that up. But so you did mention long COVID, but how did long COVID and fibromyalgia shape the way you think about healing, strength, or purpose?
Yeah, well, certainly getting really existential. I've
Mm-hmm.
very sort of high-powered job in Times Square, working 50, 60 hours a week. You really tie so much of your identity to what you do,
Oh
and
man, yeah.
having that sort of ripped away from you made me wonder, what am I doing? I wasn't really focused on much else except kind of getting the check and making sure everything
Mm-hmm.
was really running.
Right.
And so really kind of, why are we here? what is this all about? I think in some of those dark days is was helpful and kind of reaffiliated purpose. And I think that coming back, it's obviously you got to make sure you keep your lights on and keep your family fed and all of that stuff. But can you be helpful? Can you add value to society? I was disabled and kind of getting checks and
Mm,
that feeling of like, I know there's stuff I can do. I can't, it's got to be on my time, but just kind of being able to, can you get 1% better? Can you do something yesterday that you didn't do today? And, um, and I think that building that sort of intentionality and paying yourself first, I now have non-negotiables. It's just, this is what I got to do. I've got to spend, an hour in meditation, an hour
right.
cryo and doing my cold plunges. And, we'll get into some of those modalities, but those things don't happen. Life's not happening for me. And so it was difficult to try to kind of find that voice of no, you know,
Right.
and surprisingly, I was kind of surprised with the feedback. People saying, "Oh wow, I didn't know." Okay, and it was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my gosh, I've been almost screaming this at the top of my lungs." And if I finally just set up a schedule, here's what I can do for you. I can do this, and I just need this break, and and just kind of working your life into, my life is basically I don't have a weekend anymore, but that's okay because I'm taking naps every day, and I just need to know that, hey, you know what, that 4 hours that I have over here is now on a Saturday, and this is how it's got to work for me. Um, but it's taught me intention and purpose, and I think in many cases, just how important the mental part of it is. I think
Yes.
that can just destroy
Woo,
you.
man.
You're not reaching out to people. You're just kind of being solo. People don't understand.
Yeah.
Finally, the right COVID doctor where I found out there's 186 other people kind of like me who have blinking stuff and stuff crawling down their bodies, and none of it makes sense. That was really immense for me. Finding somebody who specializes in fibromyalgia is really immense for
Right.
me. Um, meds that didn't work for you that work for other people and vice versa.
Ooh,
And just pounding. 30 plus injections and 22 different doctors and different
man.
meds. You just got to get up, and it doesn't feel right to you, move on. I think that there's a
Right.
lot of people who say, I'll just go to this doctor. It's like, no, go into the urban centers. If it takes you 3 hours to get to the best doctor, that's what you need to do. And
Right.
doctor doesn't like you. I moved an entire hospital. I just didn't like very granular thinking, and I just, nope, I'm not doing it. And we're I guess if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably blessed with a lot more resources than a lot of people in the world. And
Mhm.
can you take advantage of them? Can you reach out for people? Can you learn lessons from others? And I think that's why you're out here doing what you do, and hopefully I'm doing what I do, and hopefully we let people know they're not alone, and there's stuff out here for you.
Yeah. Wow. 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 There were so many gems dropped there. And let me just say, I had some of those same experiences, let me tell you. But the main thing, the two things, well, one, just commuting to Times Square every day, my God, because I used to live in New York for 5 years, 5 winters, as they say.
Mm.
And just getting in and out of Times Square is so it's just so much, right? So much stress. And then let alone working.
Sensory overload that we talk about.
Right. Yes. And then let alone having to work in that epicenter, right? In a high powered, high intensity job at the same time. That already is just taking a toll on your body. That's just already doing a lot. And then trying to go back into that mode after having this life changing event that pretty much is stuck with you forever. That's you're not the same person, right? It's really debilitating. So it's almost nearly impossible. So I appreciate you sharing that you at least try to go back, right? You try to do your thing and you try to
Yeah, I
assimilate
mean,
back in.
I've
That's oh
had to launch my own business now.
yeah. I'm in the same
And,
boat. I'm right there with you. Yeah.
that's
Honestly,
the mother of invention, right?
yes, yeah, and it ironically, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia while I lived in New York, and part of my during my cognitive behavioral therapy, we were trying to figure out where did it come from, right? Because I didn't have long COVID, I didn't get in a car accident, I didn't have the traditional reasons they think you have fibromyalgia or experience it. We wonder if I was just so stressed from New York, from New York City of commuting, getting somewhere, going somewhere, train, plane, automobile, everything, trying to get in and out of the city and just moving and shaking, that maybe the stress kind of just induced itself into my body, to be
Wreak havoc
determined.
on your nervous system without any
Yes.
pre-existing
Oh,
conditions for sure.
yes, you hear me. So first, yeah, that was the main thing that stuck out to me. Second, I loved what you said about getting better 1%, just 1% each day. That is awesome because we're always striving for 100, right? And even on everyone's best day, not everybody's at 100. Let's just be real. Even the people without long COVID or chronic illness, most people aren't at 100. So I love that idea of just 1%. 1% can just help you so much from a mental health perspective, like you said, because it's such a big component of this experience. The mental battle daily just to get up and get out and moving is so hard. And like you said, this weekend you went to hot yoga. I know it didn't end the way you intended it for when you went to leave the house, but you left the house and you did it. That was the hardest part in my mind, is the mental part of let me just get up and go.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
No, you're right. And, to kind of continue on that, it set me back,
Mhm.
probably a couple weeks. We were talking, I got sick. I, was getting sick on the street and, put me in bed for, 36 hours straight. It's kind of the
Wow.
thing where it's just, it's not linear. And, and talking to my therapist and everything, it's, how do you, sort of gauge that where you say, hey, you know what, this is a real step backwards, and you do wallow in that, and it's really, I think where the tracking really comes in handy, just sort of look back, and maybe it's tough for you to see when you're sitting there going, what's so stupid? Why did I do this? It's
Right.
you're wallowing in this thing, but realizing that to your point, 4 months ago, it wasn't even a conversation if I could get out of the house and do it.
Hmm.
And so, kind of looking at that it's not this sort of 1%. It's a down 4% and up 7 and down 10.
Yes.
And if you look over time, it's up 1%, but certainly not that path that everyone looks and goes, oh wow, you slowly, this is great.
Hmm.
Doesn't work that
Yeah.
way.
And you touched on that sense of purpose as well, because I know it shifts with this. I can attest to that, and having to go through a lot of transitions career. I also worked in tech and a lot of high intense, high volume, high experiencing, companies, startups, apps, and like the environment is just super high paced and very competitive, right? And I'm grateful for that decade of experience, but it has come to a head where it's like, listen, I had towards the end of it, I shout out to my bosses and the people who really cared. I had to call out a lot. I was flared up a lot. I just couldn't handle the intensity of it. And having to start my own business was probably the best decision I ever made, because now you can do it on your terms and readjust your schedule. And most people are okay with saying, hey, I just need to reschedule something, and they're like, do what you need to do and we'll talk another time. But you mentioned that your sense of purpose shifts because you weren't the same person you were. You weren't as, even if you're an extrovert in a situation, right? Which I am, you can't just get up and go and be out and stay out and go hard like you used to before with your people. And you have to figure out that language to tell people and put up those boundaries, like you said, to say no. And the reaction of how people receive that is pretty interesting, depending on who they are in your village, in your life, right? So you touched on a lot of pivotal things there.
Yeah, no, and it does sort of embed with that whole concept of gratitude. Do you look at this and say, hey, you know what, my dreams, as a chief marketing officer at a law firm, and it's like, hey, my dreams of a CMO are out. Do you view it like that, or do you say, hey, you know what, this is probably the best thing that happened to me. I wasn't going to do this, and now I've got a role that I get paid. I do what I
Hmm.
like,
Hmm. On
and
your terms.
and I put my health first, and
Yes.
and so what's that worth? It's just sort of redefines what your ultimate goalposts are, and that's to now it's add immense value to people and
Yes.
healthy. And
Yes.
it used to be, I want to be this, why? Did you even think about why? And these things kind of force you to think about, what is it I want? I want to be healthy, and I want the people around me to be healthy and happy. And I can do that. It's just it's in my own way now.
Yes, and that's a good segue into advocacy, right? And I know you talked about it, especially with trying to find doctors and medication that wasn't working and all the things that you've gone through kind of to figure out where you are today. But do you have anything else to add about being your own advocate and what that looks like in real time for you?
Yeah. I think that, when you start, there's a lot of doctors who, kind of think in certain ways that, you've got to fit in this square. And it's, they're sitting there saying, well, you failed this neuropathy test, so obviously you have this, but it doesn't make sense that this thing is blink. I'm taking videos of this stuff. The first
Right.
thing before I think
Proof.
of going to
I
the
have
ER is
proof.
like, hey, let me get a video of this tremor.
Yeah.
And it at least, can kind of help gauge things. But I didn't like, doctors saying, hey, you know what, this is your, pre-existing thing, and this is, and I'm saying it's not. I'm
Right.
telling you, it's not. That's
Like, you're
not what.
not listening. You're not hearing me.
And they're just saying, that's what this is. And then so then you have this. And so at one point I'm diagnosed with like 11 different things.
Ooh.
Tell me on this med, and this med offsets this. I said,
I was gonna say, I'm assuming
I'm
that's
not
side effects,
working
right?
right, and I don't
Yeah.
like this. And I had a Jerry Maguire moment. It was
Right.
if you're cool, I'm out. And
I love it.
I went to the Mayo Clinic. I quit all my meds and I went overseas and I tried
I read that in your article. I thought that was awesome. I'm like, let me get on a flight and go over there too.
sulfur pools, and I'm wading through these stinky sulfur pools and trying
Ooh.
different,
Hey, listen, I would try it
food,
too.
whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just not taking no. And it's so
Love
tough
that.
because it's a
Yeah.
full-time job, and especially if you have disability stuff coming in, and you got your insurance claim people asking you for stuff, and you don't have the. It's like, oh my God, if I could do this, I'd be working, because this is.
Listen, y'all, he was very transparent about that in his article too, about how many insurance claims and all the things. Like, you people, not you people, sorry. Everyone needs to really take heed and hear like what he has to go through and what he's been able to experience and share and still going through. It's not for the faint of heart. Let me
Yeah,
tell you that. And
yeah.
also, like you said, you're putting your health first now, but your health made you do it. To be honest, like I was in the same situation where, yeah, I tried to be proactive here and there, but nothing can prepare you for something like this because every day is different.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out the language to then advocate, it's not the same way you used to advocate for yourself before. Like, oh, I broke my knee. Yeah, you broke your knee. It's clear. I mean, we're not, you know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
it's a drastic difference where maybe something was happening before you got to the doctor's office and you finally see them and it's not happening. And they don't believe you. You know, it's like, come on. I'm literally living this when I'm at home. So it's good that
Yeah.
you were able to figure out the language and record a proof. That's really smart to
And
share.
so, somebody said, don't mistake your 30 minutes of, and I don't mean to poo-poo the American healthcare system, but to focus on chronic pain, to focus on these
Mm.
things that are outside of the box. You get a rheumatologist who says, this isn't rheumatology. Okay. Well, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that
Right.
just because it doesn't fit in your world doesn't mean that it's not
Yeah, that
happening.
it
And
doesn't
so,
exist. Hello, I'm living it. What?
yeah, and same doctors, in the same hospital, and just going to a new one who ran, new blood tests. And now I've got a new option, which I won't get into, but
I'm sure
I've
you
got
can't
a whole
even
new
count how many
slew.
blood tests you've done at this point. I
And
don't, I
so,
lost track of how many blood tests I had to
oh
do.
my
It,
gosh,
the poking and prodding. Oh my God.
175 claims in 2 years. That's
Woo!
nothing. I do, cryotherapy 3 times a week and massages twice a week.
I
And
like cryotherapy. It's
oh,
cool.
I
It's
love it.
awesome.
It's,
It's
I
awesome.
tears running down my face. I would be sitting on
Whew.
the curb waiting for them to show up at 10 in the morning.
Oh, so
Um,
they come do it at your house?
no, no, no. I'd be
Oh, okay.
standing
I
in
was
the
just saying,
parking
wow.
lot. But yeah, cold plunges, if that gets, it can get pricey, but
Yeah,
I have some different memberships, but there's different ways you can find that. I became a certified breathwork coach. I do a lot of that,
that's awesome.
and to really
Ooh, breathing is so important, especially
find
when you're
air in
feeling,
between the pain and focus on,
yes.
that hip. And if it's just this blinking thing, how do I break it down into 500 different pain points and bring
Yes.
air between them? And I've got all sorts of different
Oh,
strategies
that's
there.
awesome. It's funny. I know in breathing, it can be off-putting for people sometimes if you have to do it randomly in a random moment and they don't
Mm.
understand what's going on. And You kinda have to breathe through it and then politely tell them after, "I'm sorry, I was experiencing some major pain. I know you can't see it on the outside, but I just needed a moment to kinda, get bring myself back down to earth because my body was firing off right now." You
Yeah,
know?
it's such a learned thing. I think that some
Mhm.
people poo-poo it because it's like, well, if I can fix it by breathing, is it? It's like, no, this stuff is deep. You've got
Yes.
monks in Thailand who can melt snow. I mean,
Woo!
there's some crazy stuff out there, but props to you. I can't do it if I'm not. It's something where if I'm alone and nothing's working and I'm like, in that fetal position, the breath,
Mm,
because I've got no other distractions. But if I'm like on
yeah.
subway, I'm trying to breathe. Props to you. I'm not there
Woo!
yet. I'm not there yet. But
Yeah, I mean, I can recall. I guess it depends on who I'm with. Actually, these days, I
this is
don't care
true.
who I'm with. But if it's like a really close, close, close friend or a loved one, right? And they understand, they know that I have fibromyalgia and they know I have these random moments, I might have to literally grab their arm and
Yep.
say, I'm experiencing a fatigue wave right now. Can we find a bench? I need to sit and breathe for a second, And in the beginning, they were kind of like, well, that's random. We're gotta walk over here, But now they're adjusted and they know, like, okay, yeah, let's sit you down, let's get your bench, and then we take a beat. They're like, why are we rushing? It's okay. You need some water, And so, but I think it takes that communication first, right, for them to really understand and say, like, no, this is just what I gotta do, or else I gotta leave.
Yeah.
It's what
And
it
then it's
is.
back to that perspective too.
Yeah.
People who don't get it, or like my friends, the grouping of friends I had changed because there's people who are like, oh, when you feel better, come, and it's like, okay,
Oh,
well, these people aren't really in your life anymore. And then there's people who
yeah.
don't manage that. Your tribe ends up sort of coming to you because of these things, and the people who kind of get it. And then they're the people you want to be around, and the people I want to
Yeah.
work with who are like, hey, I don't care if you do it today or tomorrow, just get it done, man. It's like, all right, I'll find time. It might be 4 in the
Yes.
morning, but we'll do it. I'll
Right.
do it fine. So,
Yes, that's been a hard thing too of thinking I need to be awake within these hours and work within these hours and the traditional sense of and I tried so many different times of day and times of night and all that. And I'm like, honestly, I just got to go with the flow of what my body's telling me at this point. I try to
that
get up
is
at certain
it.
times, but like it just might not work out. And that's a mental toughness as well, and having to not let your mind try to tell you, like, oh, I messed up, I didn't do this, da, da, da. The negative self-talk, but trying to swing it back around and make
Mhm.
it positive and say, no, I guess this is the moment. I needed to rest, I needed to breathe. It wasn't meant to happen today, and I'll try again maybe the second half of the day or tomorrow. Like you
Yeah.
said, those percentages, right? 1, 1, 5, 3, 7 that you can throw in there to be better. So that's spot on. All of this with advocacy for sure, and being your own advocate. So we did talk about your tribe or your village, right? And the people that come to you. So what role did your support system currently, like your friends, family, medical team, help you play in pushing forward? Because I know you talked about how you push forward as your own advocate, but how did the people in your support system help you with that too?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. Fibromyalgia is so weird. So, in the beginning, it was tough. It really was. It felt very alone and very isolating. And you have people on your team, but they don't know what to do, and you don't know what to tell them because you
And they
don't
don't
know.
know what it is. They don't, yeah, they don't
You
understand
don't
it.
know what it is, and
Yeah,
your
you don't
doctors don't
either.
know what it is. And
Nobody does.
um, I think it's like a new language, right? Everyone's got to kind of
Mhm.
learn the role and what to do. And
Yeah.
my spouse, eventually was like, hey, like, what do you need? I just kind of work through it, and it's just kind of waking up during the day and just communicating. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I know I said I was going to do this, I can't do this now. And when I do feel good, it's like my hands up and I'm trying to, but you've also got to curb that. We
Yeah. Oh,
talked
it's so
before about feeling
hard.
great, and it's like,
Ugh,
all right,
I'm gonna
I
do everything I
do,
couldn't
yeah, the last
do.
2 weeks of stuff I've put on. And
Yeah.
that's the ongoing. I don't think anybody's got that one figured out, but
Yeah.
how are you just managing the adding value and the positive talk and the feeling accomplished with the
Mhm.
reality of you're not who you were. And,
Yes.
um, you got to kind of change your expectations a little bit, and
Hmm.
find value in the small wins, and um, yeah, just changing that sort of self expectation of, but I think that came from really changing my goals of what I want to be in the
Ooh,
world. And
yeah.
it's not this multi-millionaire rock star who's
Right.
doing it. It's, hey, um, let me really add value to people. Let me be a great resource, and let me try to lead the way in different ways.
That's awesome. Yeah, shout out to your spouse for like just being there with you to figure it out because like it can be so hard. Same with my partner. I mean, he met me right on the cusp of like a couple of years in, and so it was hard to explain that in the beginning because he just saw my flare ups and didn't understand, right?
And the
And so you have to
shortness too, right?
yes.
Come off
I'm like,
nasty.
I'm sorry I'm irritable right now, but like I just need, I need a second. And
Yeah.
having to really figure out ways to express that and be cautious of your tone, of how you're interacting with your people, your support system, right? And not pushing them away. That's just like the hardest part. And I know there probably is someone listening who does do that, right? And they're still trying to navigate that space and trying to figure out that yes, you want support, then you get frustrated thinking you assume people should understand what you need, but they don't, you know? So that's a whole cycle in itself. And so I'm glad you have people in your life that were willing to just understand. I'm a different person than I was. We got to kind of understand. We got to let the old Mike go, right? And I'm still, experiencing that myself with man, I used to be a runner. I used to go out and I'm a social butterfly. And I used to do all these things. And people were so used to that my entire life. And now it's kind of like, well, you guys know this is just the difference. However, sometimes you you feel like, man, are people just not inviting me because they know I'm gonna get flared up or I'm gonna be in pain or I might say no. And so I try to say, just keep inviting me. Let me decide. Let me have the
I
choice.
just said the same thing. My friend said, "Are you concert ready?" I said, I can't even go out on a Friday night to restaurants, but
Right.
really was great that you asked me.
Yes, don't stop
You asked
inviting
me.
me. And sometimes I just have to say, maybe the flare up's worth it. Like, like I just gotta go out there and the next day I will be a couch potato and I will just pour into myself and do all kinds of self-care. But it really is worth it sometimes to just tough it out in your own new version, just to have those experiences. But everyone who's listening who might be an ally of ours that's paying attention right now, don't stop inviting us. Don't stop including us. Let us decide, what we want to do. So that's a good, you
And
brought
the
to it.
reaction may not make sense. One day it's fine, and the next day, my wife walks into a restaurant. She goes, "Oh, this is going to be terrible." I said, actually, it's good right now.
Yeah,
We're like, okay, let's run with
right. Let's rock.
it.
Exactly. So, okay, a big word in this for us and you, I know for sure, is resilience, right? Us being on this call today and not being in pain and not showing our pain right now is just a sense of resilience in itself. So, how did your understanding of resilience in this new stage of your life kind of evolve through this process, would you say?
Yeah, just that it's sort of not a binary word. It's not
Mm,
resilience doesn't mean blank.
yeah.
Resilience means something different on every day.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes, resilience, you equate it to toughness, and sometimes toughness is laying down
Yeah.
when
Oh,
you don't, you're
yeah.
saying it's tough for me to get, I'll be tougher if I get up and plod through this and let me spit out the blood and rock through this thing. And,
No.
sometimes, thinking and saying, hey, you know what, I'm gonna lay down, even though I want to do this, because it's gonna put me in better shape for something that
Hmm.
I can't miss here. And sometimes resilience is saying no to going out to eat in a small thing because you need to save your spoons for whatever it is. And so
Yeah.
it's going to mean different things, but opening your eyes and being showing some gratitude in the morning,
Oh, yeah.
and getting up, every day. Is for me, it's getting in the shower. Can I just get in the shower?
Hmm.
That's often a huge win for me in a day.
Yeah.
And
The
so
basics, right? Yeah, the basics that we just did like clockwork before without even thinking. are
Yeah.
some of the toughest things to do. So yeah, that's a great point. Wow. Yeah. Resilience. And I guess that's natural once you are actually someone who's experiencing it, especially except I know before, excuse me, we were the people on the outside looking in, maybe kind of giving sympathy to both to those who are having these experiences. But once you're in it, your sense of resiliency changes a lot. Because maybe you're resilient for something else before that you went through in your life, right? But now it's just a whole nother level to it, and it opens a new door of what resilience. And I like that idea, like you said, it was not non-binary because I agree. Like I think, like yeah, and I guess that concept of doors, right? It's a lot of doors in our life that resiliency we can open up different layers of that in our life, and definitely this is one of them. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, what were some of your biggest physical and emotional hurdles you faced during this? I know you touched on some, but I don't know if there's a couple more you want to add and kind of how you move through them to get through the process.
Yeah, it's just the fear of really not knowing, whether it's fibromyalgia, long COVID, these things are just they're buckets for things
Hmm.
that people don't understand, I guess
Yeah.
is sort of it. And so, just never knowing, I think it's, people saying focus on what you can control. And, it's like, okay,
I
I
can't
don't
control
get
it.
it 'cause I can't see, I can't feel my face and I've lost the
Right.
feeling in here. And, it's almost like you wish you had a diagnosis that made sense because at least you
Hmm.
have a prescription to follow.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the isolation, and then just explaining things and having doctors say, I don't really know. Um, the nerve. I think that's the emotional part was really that lack of knowledge, lack of being seen, and lack of any sort of hope. I guess
Hmm.
in the beginning, it's just tough to really be hopeless and not know, kind of just not feel like there's anyone really there. And
Yeah.
so I think that finding some of these things like the NFA and US Pain Foundation I've been working with
Yeah.
a little bit as well. Um, that stuff it goes a long way. That I think physically, really I was an athlete, so they think that a bunch of concussions I had could have contributed to some of the neurological stuff.
Mm.
Bunch of I needed multiple surgeries on hips and shoulders. They found a fracture in
Okay.
my spine. They
Yeah.
didn't know. That stuff wasn't as bad as the nerve damage.
Yeah.
Nerve, the blinking, seeing stuff crawling down, and just it's just pain, but you can't see it. And it was
Yeah.
just, you know, there's not a pain pill that does it, and
Hmm.
makes you pretty angry at the world and pretty
Yeah.
angry at the Sacklers and all of the, that just killed, I think, a lot of the political support that was around finding help with chronic pain and finding resources because it's
Hmm.
probably a political nightmare for someone to try to back pain meds in the light of this. Even though there's probably so many non-opiate, non-addictive offerings. You're seeing some great developments there, but all of this kind of, the healthcare system being difficult to navigate and not having solutions and not having really a handbook for things.
Yeah.
The way you probably approached it and the way I did, it's not a book. Okay, you feel like crap. Go to step A. Is this
Right.
and so I think that's, what we're trying to do here is, help people, give them some sort of directionality, some sort of roadmap, some sort of resources. You go to the NFA, hopefully these stories that are individualized yet sort of collective,
Yeah,
can help people. And that's,
definitely.
I think, what we're both trying to do here.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, I appreciate that. And oh, you really hit the nail on the head because this can be a very emotional, mental, not can be, it is a very emotional, mental taxing experience. And I know they also like to say depression goes hand in hand, right? Like it's like this cloud following you the whole time throughout your experience. And that's, I know a lot of people with chronic illnesses in general, especially ours with the pain that we can't see and that we're just experiencing and how much it takes a toll on our lives. And just the basics of what we try to do, like you said, get in the shower. and just live your life, right? It can definitely be a very emotional experience, and it does. You go on a roller coaster. It is. It just is what it is. Like,
Anybody who says that, there's no, they're separated. If you're constantly in pain with no out, and I don't know anybody in the world who can hold their mental
right?
capacity together. It's just,
No.
you're lying to me if you say that that doesn't affect your mental health in some way. As strong as
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
as versed as you are, as
Hmm.
whatever it is, it's gonna beat you down.
Yeah,
You get,
especially when when you have those quiet moments alone. I'm sure you're
yeah.
feeling something. Maybe you don't express it to the world, but we all are having those moments, and it just takes a lot of mind shifting to kind of just decide to keep going, like you said, and not feel hopeless, because you can get stuck in that place and it could be hard. Especially if you don't feel like you have the right support system. So, like Mike said, hopefully this video gives you some a ray of sunshine to help you feel better. Also, I would be remiss. I wish you guys could see the NFA. Oh, I wish I knew about the NFA sooner. Yes, I know about them now, clearly, but when I was first diagnosed, I wish that was an option that I thought to look up or that I knew about, because wow, there's so many resources on there that you can find about good doctors and good medication and holistic methods and people with other experiences, that it's just a smorgasbord of resources, honestly, that I wish I knew about sooner, because wow, I probably would have been so much more knowledgeable ahead of time, but I guess it was within my own time that I needed to figure it out. But probably wouldn't have taken me so long. Well, also, let me be clear, I haven't figured it all out still. It's an ongoing journey, and I really think Mike can attest to that. Um, but going into a good segue there, like holistic practices. So you tried so many different, healing methods for infrared therapy. You talked about breathing techniques and mindfulness and cryotherapy. Which would you say is probably the most made the biggest difference for you, is like the differentiator in your life? And which one is your favorite, if you had to choose one? I know it's kind of hard.
Yeah, no, excellent question. And, certainly, just want to kind of lead with, what works for me may not work for everyone
Yeah.
else. The one thing that, I think is very under discussed, and major impact is what you put in your body.
Ooh, yes.
And, that's, things you can control,
Yeah,
what
that's what you
you can
actually
eat
can
from us
control.
to eat organic, and all these
Yeah.
things. It's expensive to do
Hmm.
that, but there are ways, buying frozen organic foods and things like that, buying in bulk. There are
Growing,
ways
planting your
you can
own, growing
get
outside.
around that. I got a little raised garden in the back
Yeah.
of my apartment here. Um, a lot of spices. I follow roughly this woman, Wall's protocol, but it's basically sugar's the devil. Sugar
Mm,
is the devil. And I cut out, I basically drink water and tea, and
hmm.
I try to eat all whole foods. They talk about eating on the outside of the supermarket,
Yeah, the outside
not on the
perimeter.
middle. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so that was really great. Obviously, it helped me to lose weight. The drinking and stuff, and getting rid of that. It really helped me to lose weight. That's less pressure on your joints. It's less pressure on
Yes.
your bones. These things, and movement. Motion is lotion. I know it sucks. It
Yeah.
totally sucks. I have AS. It's a spinal degenerative sort of arthritic thing that was also
Mhm.
embedded in this, and
Okay.
still need to replace two of my hips. And so there's a
Woo!
little bit of physical stuff going on, but
Yeah.
you got to move. You got to do it. And it's terrible when you get tears coming down your eyes, walking on the treadmill, but that's it.
Yeah.
And so I would say, nutrition and movement. And to me, it's really about those heat and ice therapies.
Yes.
Bio, I might go multiple times in a day. Cold plunges, I got, filled up with ice. I've got more ice than I could shake a stick at, just ice
Mm.
all the time.
Wow.
Be on my knees and on my back,
Mhm.
throughout the day.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and then just finding different stuff. Some people really enjoy those light modalities, the red light.
Mhm.
I had some different stuff. I used to enjoy kind of the sound stuff.
Oh,
Now with
yeah.
my ears, I can't do some of those things. So these things are morphing as my things change.
Mhm.
But just getting out, exploring, not saying
Yeah,
no.
trying a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
I did, massages. I now have a trigger point person who I get
Mm.
comes in with one thing for 40
Ooh.
minutes, and I'm just
I experienced that in
feeding food
PT,
and
yeah, physical
stuff.
therapy. Oh, man. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So, and again, it's like, if the PT's not doing it for you, there's 200 other PTs out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Get,
Yes.
get inspired. If this isn't working for you, don't don't worry about feeling polite because this lady asked you when you're next. Listen, this isn't working for me. If you don't want to say it in person, just don't book the next one. Go find someone else. And
Yes.
no, this is that advocacy. No one's gonna care the way that you care.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
not grabbing that bull by the horns, someone else is driving your life. And we already have the disease driving our life, so we need to be at least in shotgun.
Yes, I'd like to tell people you are in the driver's seat of your life. So that is, oh, that's perfect. Yes. Ah, you're so right. And thank you for sharing that too. I just think there are so many different types of holistic practices and like motion experiences that you can just have out there, from sensory deprivation to, like you said, crowd therapy. I've tried so many at this point, and I can say they're kind of a band-aid for the moment, right? Like you feel better, you're getting some relief, and it might not feel better the next day. But listen, relief is relief.
Yeah.
And what helps, helps. And so you brought up a good point too. Listen, you are in control of what you eat. You are in control of that. So that is something that I have a personal journey with myself too, of just feeling like, dang, does food have a control over me? What's going on here? And do I flare up when I eat certain things? So actually, right now, I'm on a vegetarian journey. I've been vegetarian since January 1st. And for Lent, I actually gave up all starchy foods. So that was a challenge in itself. Veggies, fruit, veggies, fruit, veggies, fruit, and just really exploring and figuring out different things out there to keep me full and give me more protein. And like you said, the weight is coming off, changing my medication also, just figuring out like, oh, my medication was making me eat. Wow, that's crazy. Had no idea. Wish they told me that it would do that, you know? And just really doing your research and really trying different methods. And you were right about the motion situation. Sometimes we think, oh, I need to rest, 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 and not move. And honestly, no. A lot of times I feel better when I actually find the strength to get up out of bed and go for a walk outside. And I'm like, wow, that actually worked, you know?
Mhm.
But trying different methods, highly encouraged. There's also a lot of resources out there. So maybe you're hearing about the resources we're talking about and thinking, I can't afford that. But maybe check with your job. I was doing free crowd therapy because of the perks I had through my job, my previous 9 to 5. So that was how I kind of explored that experience, and you just never know the resources that are out there that you
The
can just
freezer ice, right? Cold plunges.
yeah, just
Those
figure
are
hey, you can get creative with it and figure it out. Like you said, I have reusable ice packs that can be heat or ice, right? So I can put in the freezer or put in the microwave. There's large size that fit my whole back, there's small size that fit my neck. So there's a lot of good resources out there to help, and we don't have to just fully depend on medication because it doesn't honestly take away the pain.
mm,
100%. Let's be honest. So those are really good tips. All right. So now we're getting closer to the end of this. We'll wrap it up soon. But if someone right, just beginning their stage, and I know we little tiptoed over there into both of our experiences in the beginning, but if they're beginning their stages of fibromyalgia or chronic illness journey, right, and they feel really overwhelmed right now because it can, what's some advice you would give them, or what's something you would share with them that you wish someone said to you when you were in that moment?
yeah, just to, start kind of tracking,
Mm,
what are the days that you feel worse?
mm.
Can you identify some of these triggers? You're not going to be able to get rid of them all, right? No one's saying that you can magically snap your fingers and you'll have a boss who's not yelling at you, or you'll have, but, are you getting enough sleep? Or are what are the kind of the basic blocking and tackling things? Hey, you know what? I feel
Mhm.
worse in the middle of the week. Okay, can I start to kind of pull these things apart?
Yeah.
Just start to question everything. Well, I've always eaten this, so well, it obviously can't be bad for, well, you don't know, your stuff has evolved. So
Hmm.
looking at the different meds, don't take things that aren't working for you and double down on
Yeah.
things that do. So can you start to kind of separate these things out, and just, tackle them one at a time? For me, it was, okay, let me, get rid of all the things that I'm doing that I know, when I'm not sleeping enough, when I'm going out at night, where, I'm eating crappy food. Okay, let me get rid of that stuff. Okay, I felt
Yeah.
intuitively better and this time, but not this time. Okay, let but if you don't have a plan in place and you're just kind of going and shooting stuff, I did that. I was spinning around like a whirling dervish for
Yes.
um,
Yes.
which doctor is bad, which doctor is good. I didn't. Okay, well, put it down. Do you have an Excel spreadsheet? Do you have just a grid
Mm,
or something?
yeah.
Build
Right.
some
Pen and paper.
system,
What's your method? Write it down. Phone,
whatever it is, right?
spreadsheet, like you said, or voice note. You can't, your fingers hurt that day. Just speak about it in your phone and have a
There are things you
record.
can do, yeah. And
Yeah.
so, just kind of building that stuff out. I might not have felt better, but I knew that, hey, you know what? I'm not eating sugar anymore. That can't be
Hmm.
bad, right?
Hmm.
It's tough, the mental part of getting over it when you feel like crap. Maybe all you want is some ice cream and to
Right.
involved, but you know that's not going to be good for you. And starting to
Mhm.
really kind of take, we're not able to live like the others. That's just
Yeah.
what it is, right? And so get over it
Right.
and let's move along to what can we enjoy. Well,
Right.
not doing that, then we get to go outside in the sun and get some nice warm sun in our face. Like,
Yeah.
bro, that's a win.
Yeah. Right. Like,
So,
your life's over. There's a part of acceptance that has to happen. But yeah, like you said, focus on the things that you still can control or that you can still enjoy. It's just a different version of that now.
just
Yeah.
tracking when I'm super hydrated, when I'm getting up every hour and stretching out, when I spend
Mhm.
my hour in the morning doing my stretching, when I get hot and cold therapy, I'm generally going to be a better person. That's for
Yeah.
me. That's what I do every day. If I
The
don't do
non-negotiables, right?
them,
Like you said, the
yeah.
non-negotiable.
If you
Yeah.
don't do them, then you can't, I'm not saying you blame yourself sometimes, but you gotta kind of hold yourself accountable at the same point because
Oh, yeah.
it's tough, and that's where we're at though. That's where we're at.
Right. Yeah. That's the acceptance. So, do you feel like, I mean, that kind of we said that, but how do you feel like the NFA is an important resource for this community? And why should people reach out to the NFA?
Yeah. For me, it was, resources. I didn't really know that this stuff really existed.
Yeah.
Somebody kind of, hey, you have fibromyalgia, you have, regional
Like, what?
chronic pain syndrome. It's like, okay, I don't know what to do with this information. Just found it, I reached out, and, started getting involved. They had some, different pain tools programs that people are piloting. Talked with the U.S. folks over at U.S. Pain as well. They have a different support group. There are different things that work for different people. Some people may want to sort of do this introvertedly, and you can go to the NFA site. They've got all those different resources.
Yeah.
MyPainPlan.org is another great thing. But like, people are going in and using it in their own ways. NFA, also has different veterans groups. If you're a veteran, or maybe an LGBT group, or whatever, these things that you kind
Mhm.
of affinity groups that you can identify with and that
Yes.
feel you, I think are super good. For me, it's now I makes me feel better to be at least helping somebody.
Yeah.
There's that kind of point when you can get out of that thing. Can you help someone else out? So I think it's really kind of creating this avenue, um, for us that hasn't really existed, that you and I certainly didn't know about. And so,
Yes.
um, I think that was a lot. I get very emotional. Kind of my first kind of group call, and hearing some of the stories, and people who really want to be doing a lot more than they are. And it's all walks of life. It doesn't judge. It's going to come after you when it does. And, hopefully we can all learn from each other, and
Yeah.
know that we're not alone, and provide another support system for people, because I think that sense of hope and sanity is very important.
Love that. Oh, I couldn't say it better myself. That might need to be a soundbite right there in itself for the community to hear. I love that. And yeah, he's right. It's such a resourceful community and just a resourceful organization as well because you can go at it any kind of way you want to. Like he said, you can find groups that you need to be, with. You can go at it alone and get some information and just be informed. There's a lot of ways to do it. So thank you for that, Mike. All right. So to wrap this up, what's a piece of encouragement or advice that you want to leave for anyone struggling right now that is watching this video?
Know you're not alone, and just try to get 1% better. What's one thing you can do today? If you're really in a place, you're minute by minute, and then that white knuckle, what are you doing in the next 10 minutes? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's shutting your phone off. Maybe it's, getting in a hot shower. Maybe it's icing yourself for 5 minutes. Maybe it's the deep breath. Just just get through the immediate. Know you're not alone, and reach out to us if we can be helpful to you.
That's awesome. Yeah, the small wins. Small wins are end up being big wins, right? The 1%. You made me think, I'm like, maybe after this, I'm gonna go do some yoga real quick and make that my goal today to get my body stretching and moving. So I really appreciate that, Mike. Wow, this has been such an amazing conversation. And I just want to thank you, Mike, personally for your vulnerability, your wisdom, and your honesty with your own experience because your journey I know will definitely resonate with our community. And it's not just because of the challenges you face, but because the strength and the resilience, like we talked about, and the hope that you carry forward. So, to everyone that's watching, if this conversation moved you, we all encourage you to share it, watch it again and again, and share it with someone who might need help. And know that healing is possible, right? Even when the road is uncertain, we're also trying to figure this out. And of course, if you're looking for more stories, more support, more resources, visit mfaware at .org and follow the NFA on social media. Again, this is Jacqueline Monet. I'm signing off and reminding you to advocate for yourself, take up space, be in the driver's seat of your life, and never forget the power of your story. So until next time, we'll see you back here. And we just want to thank Mike one more time. Appreciate you for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right.